Iceland sits alone in the North Atlantic, suspended between continents and climates. Too volcanic to be stable and too isolated to be ignored. It is larger than Ireland, roughly the size of Kentucky, and built almost entirely from forces that are still active. So how did a country with no forests, no armies, and no ancient cities manage to endure at the edge of the inhabitable world? The island rises directly from the mid-Atlantic ridge, where the Eurasian and North American tectonic plates pull apart.
So if you want more journeys into the unforgiving, the beautiful, and the unknown, subscribe. Hit that button and join us as we explore the places that don't fit on postcards.
Nowhere else on Earth does this boundary sit so exposed. Here, geology is not buried. It is visible, audible, sometimes violent. The land is young. Much of Iceland is less than 20,000 years old. Some of it was created within living memory. Lava fields stretch for kilometers, still sharp, still black, still empty. Nothing softens them. No soil yet. No patience from nature. And yet, people came. The first permanent settlers arrived in the late 9th century, sailing west from Scandinavia into uncertainty. They found no indigenous population, no cities, no roads, just fire, ice, wind, and grazing land that barely cooperated. They stayed anyway. This decision shaped everything that followed. Iceland never developed around agriculture in the continental sense. Crops struggled. Forests were quickly stripped for fuel and construction, then never fully returned. Survival depended on adaptation rather than control. The sea mattered more than the land. Fishing became the backbone of life. Weather became law. Isolation became normal. Even today, nearly all Icelanders live along the coast. The interior remains largely uninhabited. Highland deserts of volcanic rock, glaciers, and rivers that rearrange themselves without warning. At the center of this narrow ribbon of settlement lies Reykjavik, the northernmost capital city in the world. It does not dominate its surroundings. It blends into them. Low buildings, muted colors, a skyline shaped more by geography than ambition. Reykjavik feels less like a capital and more like a gathering point, a place where the country briefly concentrates before thinning out again. Beyond it, roads follow the edges. There is one primary highway that circles the island, tracing fjords, lava plains, and glacial outwash. Inland routes exist, but they are seasonal, unreliable, and often impassable. Iceland does not invite shortcuts. The weather enforces this. Storms arrive without ceremony. Winds reach speeds that would shut down cities elsewhere. Snow can fall sideways. Fog can erase distance entirely. Conditions change faster than forecasts can keep up. Icelanders do not dramatize this. They plan around it. That planning mentality runs deep. Houses are insulated not for comfort, but for survival. Windows are triple glazed. Roofs are weighted. Colorful exteriors exist not for beauty, but visibility. So homes can be seen against snow and volcanic ash. The landscape does not offer protection. There are few trees to block wind. Few hills gentle enough to shelter villages. Exposure is constant. And yet, the country is rich. Not in resources traditionally fought over, but in energy. Geothermal heat rises everywhere. Steam vents from the ground. Hot water flows naturally. Entire towns are heated without fossil fuels. Electricity comes largely from hydroelectric and geothermal sources. This abundance changed Iceland's trajectory. It allowed industry without coal, comfort without smoke, sustainability born not of ideology, but geography. Still, energy does not soften the land. Glaciers cover roughly a tenth of the island. They move slowly but relentlessly, grinding valleys into shape. Beneath them, volcanoes wait. Eruptions occur regularly, sometimes beneath ice, triggering floods that tear through landscapes with sudden force. These events have names and memories. In Iceland, disasters are remembered not by dates, but by places. Valleys reshaped, farms abandoned, coastlines altered. History here is geological. Human history, by comparison, feels recent. Iceland was governed from abroad for centuries, first by Norway, then Denmark. Power was distant, administration sparse. Self-reliance became necessity, not philosophy. The Alinghi, one of the world's oldest parliamentary institutions, was established early, not because Iceland was advanced, but because isolation demanded local decision-making. Disputes had to be settled. Laws had to be shared. Cooperation was survival. This tradition persists. Icelandic society is small. Everyone is connected within a few degrees. Reputation matters. Accountability is personal. Authority is questioned openly, not ceremonially. The country does not idolize power. It tolerates it cautiously. Culturally, Iceland speaks softly. Its language has changed remarkably little over 1,000 years, allowing modern readers to understand medieval texts with minimal difficulty. This continuity is not accidental. It reflects deliberate preservation. Stories matter here. Sagas were not entertainment. They were records of land claims, feuds, lineage, survival. Oral history carried weight because written infrastructure was limited. Memory became currency. That narrative instinct remains. Iceland produces writers, musicians, and artists at a rate disproportionate to its population. Expression is not indulgence here. It is processing. The land demands it. Driving through Iceland, scale constantly shifts. A valley that seems open closes suddenly. A plain reveals itself as a lava field stretching beyond sight. Waterfalls appear without warning, then vanish behind ridges. Distances are deceptive. What looks close may take hours. What looks empty may be dangerously active. This instability shapes behavior. Icelanders are cautious without being fearful. They respect warnings. They check conditions. They do not assume control. Tourists sometimes misread this as passivity. It is not. It is experience. The sea reinforces a lesson. Fishing villages cling to rocky coasts, exposed to the North Atlantic. Harbors are small. Breakwaters are essential. Storms claim lives even now. The ocean provides livelihood and threat in equal measure. This duality defines Iceland's worldview. Nothing is purely benevolent. Nothing is purely hostile. Everything demands respect. Even beauty carries risk. Iceland's landscapes are often described as otherworldly, but to those who live there, they are practical. A glacier is a water source. A volcano is a hazard map. A river is power and danger combined. Romanticism fades quickly in a land that tests consistency. That test extends into daily life. Long winters bring limited daylight. In some months, the sun barely rises. In summer, it barely sets. Sleep patterns shift. Time becomes flexible. The body adapts or struggles. Mental resilience matters. Community becomes essential. Social life moves indoors. Gatherings are planned. Isolation is mitigated intentionally. Iceland understands loneliness not as weakness, but as a condition to be managed. And then, suddenly, light returns. Summer arrives quickly. Grass grows fast. Roads open. The island exhales. People travel. Work accelerates. The country makes up for lost time. This seasonal compression creates intensity. Life is not evenly distributed across the year. It comes in waves. That rhythm defines Iceland more than any landmark. It is a country shaped by interruption. Eruption, storm, darkness, thaw. Continuity is maintained not by stability, but by adaptation. And that adaptation has allowed Iceland to remain itself. Modern, connected, yet unmistakably singular. Leaving Iceland, what lingers is not just a landscape, but the discipline it imposes. A reminder that nature does not negotiate. That comfort is conditional. That survival can be quiet and competent. Iceland does not ask to be conquered, admired, or explained. It simply exists, unfinished, unstable, and enduring. Thanks for watching. See you soon. There's a moment in Iceland when the land stops feeling dramatic and starts feeling intimate. It happens far from waterfalls and postcards, on a gravel road that narrows without warning, in a town with no traffic lights, at a gas station where everyone seems to know who arrived before you did. That's when Iceland shifts from spectacle to system. Because this country runs on logistics more than romance. Everything must arrive by ship or plane. Food, materials, fuel. Choices are shaped by supply lines long before taste or preference. Grocery stores carry fewer options, not because of austerity, but because abundance is expensive at the edge of the map. Icelanders grow used to this early. You take what's available. You plan ahead. You don't waste. That practicality carries into how people dress. Clothing is functional first. Waterproof, windproof, layered. Fashion exists, but it is secondary to survival. Looking prepared matters more than looking new. The same logic applies to movement. Outside towns, roads are narrow and lightly guarded. No dramatic barriers. No constant reminders. The assumption is that drivers are paying attention. Responsibility is individual. This trust is not naive. It's enforced by consequence. A mistake here does not end with inconvenience. It ends with exposure. Cold, distance, silence, which is why rescue culture in Iceland is unusually strong. Volunteer search and rescue teams train constantly. They know the terrain. They know the weather. They know how fast things go wrong. Their presence is quiet but decisive. When people get lost, the response is immediate, not out of heroism, but duty. In a place this sparse, everyone understands that one day it could be them. That understanding binds communities tightly. Small towns operate on shared awareness. If someone doesn't show up, it's noticed. If a car sits too long, it's questioned. Isolation sharpens attention. And yet, people choose to live here. Not because it's easy, because it's honest. There's little pretense in Icelandic social life. Introductions are simple. Status markers are muted. Wealth is rarely displayed. Titles matter less than competence. Even names reflect this. Surnames here are patronymic, not inherited family lines. You are known as someone's child, not as part of a dynasty. Identity is personal, not ancestral. This subtly reshapes social hierarchy. You can't hide behind a name that carries power. Reputation is earned continuously. That accountability influences leadership too. Political debates are direct. Disagreements are public. There is less tolerance for abstraction. Policies are discussed in terms of immediate impact, not distant ideals. Iceland is too small for theory, without consequence. That smallness also reshapes creativity. Artists here are not separated from daily life. Musicians work other jobs. Writers live next to fishermen. The boundary between cultural production and ordinary work is thin. This keeps art grounded. Music often pulls from landscape, but not sentimentally. It mirrors weather patterns, repetition, sudden breaks, long silences. Silence especially matters. Iceland is one of the quietest inhabited places in Europe. Outside towns, there is no constant hum, no distant traffic, no background machinery. Wind and water dominate. This absence changes perception. Thoughts become louder. Time stretches. Distractions fall away. The mind either settles or resists. Many visitors find this unsettling. Locals accept it. They build routines to manage it. Swimming pools are one answer. Heated by geothermal water, they exist in nearly every town. Not as luxury, but necessity. They are social spaces, exercise spaces, conversation spaces. They anchor communities. You don't swim here for privacy. You swim for contact. The ritual is fixed. Showers are thorough. Rules are followed. This isn't about control. It's about hygiene in a shared environment. Trust is maintained through compliance. That respect for shared systems runs deep. Waste is sorted carefully. Infrastructure is maintained meticulously. Roads are repaired before they fully fail. Iceland does not assume redundancy. It plans to keep what it has working. This mindset extends to animals. Livestock roam freely in summer. Sheep appear suddenly on roads. Drivers slow without complaint. The animal was there first. Horses are treated with particular care. Icelandic horses are small, sturdy, and isolated genetically. Imports are banned. Once a horse leaves a country, it cannot return. This rule is absolute. It protects not just animals, but heritage. The breed reflects centuries of adaptation to harsh terrain and climate. It is not optimized. It is resilient. Resilience is prized more than perfection here. You see it in buildings too. Houses are compact. Rooms are efficient. Storage matters. Nothing is oversized. The goal is warmth, not grandeur. Windows frame landscapes deliberately. When you live with limited light for part of the year, how you receive it matters. Light is treated like a resource. So is time. Icelandic timekeeping is flexible but purposeful. Appointments are honored but not rigidly. Weather intervenes. Conditions override schedules. This is understood, not argued. Nature sets the final terms. Which brings us to the Highlands. Most Icelanders do not live there. Many never go. The interior is not central to daily identity. It exists as a boundary, a reminder of what lies beyond habitation. Crossing into it feels like leaving the social world. Roads disappear. Signs vanish. Horizons flatten. The land becomes abstract. Scale loses reference. You are reduced to movement and awareness. This emptiness is not romanticized locally. It is respected and largely avoided. The coast, by contrast, feels human. Fjords carve deep into the land, creating pockets of settlement that feel inward-looking and self-contained. Villages face water, not each other. Connections run by boat as much as road. In winter, some of these places feel nearly cut off. Supplies arrive. People endure. Spring reconnects them. This cyclical isolation reinforces self-sufficiency. You fix what breaks. You improvise. You help neighbors. There is no audience here, which may be why Icelanders often appear unimpressed by attention. Global fascination with the country surged in recent decades. Visitors arrived in numbers that dwarfed the population. The response was measured. Infrastructure expanded. Rules tightened. The land was protected not through marketing, but regulation. This again reflects experience. Iceland knows that unchecked access damages fragile systems. The ground here takes centuries to recover. Moss crushed by footsteps may not return in a lifetime. Protection is not sentimental. It is practical. That practicality is also why fear plays a limited role. Eruptions happen. Storms arrive. Earthquakes shake houses. These events are not dramatized daily. They are incorporated into risk models and building codes. Preparation replaces panic. Children grow up learning what to do, where to go, what signs matter. Safety is cultural knowledge. This creates calm under pressure, not indifference, competence. And competence breeds confidence, not the loud kind, the quiet kind that comes from knowing your limits and planning within them. That confidence allows Iceland to remain relatively open, even as it stays firm. People are welcomed, but expectations are clear. Respect the land. Follow guidance. Take responsibility. If you do, Iceland gives back generously, not in comfort, but in clarity. Clarity of scale, of consequence, of connection. It strips away excess, which is why leaving Iceland often feels disorienting. Noise returns. Options multiply. Systems cushion mistakes. The world feels louder and softer at the same time. What lingers is not the image of a volcano or glacier, but a recalibration, a reminder that life can be structured around limits without feeling small, that isolation can sharpen rather than shrink. that a society can function on trust, preparation, and mutual reliance. Iceland does not offer escape. It offers perspective. And when you leave, the island doesn't follow. It stays where it is, north, exposed, unfinished, continuing its slow conversation between land and people, waiting for those willing to listen. Thanks for watching. See you soon. There's another truth about Iceland that only becomes clear after the novelty fades. The country is not built around moments. It is built around intervals. Intervals between storms, between supply ships, between light and dark, between eruptions that reshape maps, and quiet years when nothing visible happens at all. Life here is calibrated to wait. That waiting is not passive. It is active, watchful, disciplined. People check forecasts not as curiosity, but as necessity. They read the sky. They read the wind. They read the ocean. These are not metaphors. They are skills. Icelanders learn early that conditions are information, and information is survival. This creates a mindset that feels foreign to places shaped by abundance. Decisions are reversible only to a point. Mistakes have consequences that cannot always be softened. So choices are made carefully, often conservatively. But this does not produce fear. It produces deliberation. You feel it in how people speak. Pauses are normal. Silence is not rushed. Responses are measured. There is no pressure to fill space. Words arrive when they are ready. This rhythm can feel slow to outsiders, but it is efficient. Nothing unnecessary is added. That economy of expression mirrors the land itself. Iceland wastes nothing, not because of moral instruction, but because waste was never an option. Materials were reused. Buildings were repaired instead of replaced. Clothing was mended. Food was preserved. Even now, in a modern economy, that instinct remains. Secondhand stores thrive. Tools are shared. Skills are passed down. There is pride in making things last. That pride is quiet. Bragging feels out of place here. Achievement is acknowledged, then absorbed into routine. Success does not elevate you above the system. It reinforces your role within it. This attitude affects ambition. People aspire, but rarely at the cost of balance. Overwork is not glorified. Burnout is recognized. The goal is sustainability, not just environmentally, but personally. This may explain why Icelanders often appear calm under pressure. They are accustomed to managing long-term strain rather than short-term crisis. Crisis, when it comes, is handled methodically. Eruptions are monitored. Roads are closed. Evacuations are orderly. There is no chaos because procedures are trusted. Institutions are visible and accessible. Authority is not distant. This trust is fragile, but it exists. It exists because Iceland is small enough for accountability to remain tangible. Failures are remembered. Successes are shared. There is little room for abstraction. Everyone is reachable. That closeness shapes social boundaries. Privacy is respected, but anonymity is limited. You are known by context, by association, by reputation. This can feel restrictive, but it also provides stability. You are not invisible here. That visibility discourages excess. It also encourages responsibility. Even disagreement carries this tone. Arguments are direct, but rarely personal. People debate fiercely, then coexist without lingering hostility. Tomorrow's cooperation matters more than today's victory. This pragmatism extends to Iceland's relationship with nature myths, elves, hidden people, folklore. These stories persist, but not as superstition in the usual sense. They function more like cautionary narratives, reminders that the land has agency, that not everything should be disturbed. Belief is less important than respect. You don't need to believe in something to act as if it matters. That distinction is central to Icelandic thinking. The country operates comfortably between rational planning and symbolic awareness. Science guides decisions. Stories guide behavior. The two do not compete. This coexistence allows Iceland to maintain humility in the face of power it cannot control. Which brings us to scale again, but not in terms of size. In Iceland, scale is temporal. A road washed out by a flood will be rebuilt. A glacier melting will not be replaced. A lava field may cool in years, but recover in centuries. Time horizons are long here. This long view tempers urgency. Not apathy, patience. Patience shapes how Iceland engages with the world beyond its shores. Global events are followed closely, but reacted to cautiously. Iceland does not rush alignment. It assesses impact. It chooses involvement deliberately. This is not neutrality. It is selectivity. Being small means choosing carefully where to expend energy. That selectivity also applies to growth. Economic expansion is debated in terms of carrying capacity. Tourism, for example, is not seen purely as opportunity. It is weighed against strain on infrastructure, housing, ecosystems. Limits are discussed openly. This openness is not performative. It is necessary. In a country where one damaged system can ripple outward quickly, foresight is survival. That foresight is taught culturally. Children grow up outdoors, and whether that would keep others inside. They learn early what their bodies can handle. They learn independence not as rebellion, but competence. Playgrounds are not padded excessively. Risks are managed, not removed. Trust is placed in learning. This creates adults who are capable rather than coddled. And capable people require fewer rules. This may be why Iceland often feels relaxed despite its constraints. When responsibility is internalized, enforcement becomes lighter. You feel this on roads without fences, in towns without heavy policing, in communities where order is maintained socially rather than forcibly. That social fabric is strong but flexible. When someone struggles, support is practical. Help is offered without spectacle. The goal is function, not display. This understated compassion defines Icelandic generosity. It does not announce itself. It appears when needed, and then it recedes. There is little sentimentality about hardship here. Hardship is acknowledged, addressed, and moved through. Dwelling is discouraged, not because pain is denied, but because stagnation is dangerous. The land teaches this lesson relentlessly. If you stop moving in bad weather, you freeze. If you stop adapting, systems fail. Momentum matters. But momentum does not mean speed. It means continuity. That continuity is what Iceland protects most fiercely. Language, landscape, social trust, institutional transparency. These are not romantic ideals. They are load-bearing structures. Remove one, and strain increases everywhere else. which is why change here is incremental. Reforms are tested, adjusted, revisited. There is little appetite for sweeping transformation unless necessity demands it. This frustrates some observers. It reassures others. Iceland has learned that survival favors those who adjust course without losing direction. And so the country continues small, exposed, deliberate, not trying to lead the world, not try to escape it, just maintaining its balance on a restless piece of earth. When you leave Iceland, you don't leave with a sense of completion. You leave with a recalibrated sense of proportion. Noise feels louder elsewhere. Excess feels heavier. Certainty feels less earned. What stays with you is not drama, but steadiness. The knowledge that life can be built around limits without becoming narrow. That strength can be quiet. That a society does not need scale to have weight. Iceland remains where it has always been, between plates, between oceans, between extremes, continuing its long negotiation with the elements, unfinished, unyielding, still adapting. Thanks for watching. See you soon. There's one more shift that happens in Iceland, and it's subtle. It's when you stop thinking of the country as dramatic, harsh, or extreme, and start understanding it as procedural. Iceland runs on procedures, not bureaucracy in the abstract sense, but practice responses to known realities. Weather turns, ground moves, light disappears, supply lines stretch. None of this is surprising. What matters is what happens next. And what happens next is almost always rehearsed. This is a country that plans not for the best case, but for the likely one. The road will close. The ferry will be delayed. The storm will arrive earlier than expected. Plans are made with flexibility built in, not optimism. That mindset reshapes daily expectations. If something doesn't happen today, it happens tomorrow. If tomorrow doesn't work, next week will. There is patience here, but it's not passive. It's structured. This structure shows up in the most ordinary places. At small airports where flights land in difficult conditions without spectacle. At harbors where schedules adjust without complaint. At construction sites where progress is slow, steady, and weather-dependent. No one pretends otherwise. This realism removes a certain kind of anxiety. When difficulty is assumed, its arrival doesn't feel like failure. It feels normal. That normalization of challenge is one of Iceland's quiet strengths. It allows people to stay calm when things go wrong, because wrong is already part of the model. You notice this especially in conversation around risk. People don't exaggerate danger, but they don't downplay it either. Warnings are direct. Advice is specific. There is little emotional framing. Do this. Don't do that. Conditions are changing. The responsibility is then yours. This transfer of responsibility is fundamental. Iceland trusts individuals to make informed decisions once given the facts. It does not infantilize. And when someone ignores guidance and faces consequences, sympathy exists, but so does accountability. This balance keeps the system functional. It also shapes how Icelanders see luck. Luck is not romanticized. Surviving a storm is not luck, it's preparation. Avoiding disaster is not fortune, it's attention. This reframing creates a culture that values awareness over chance, awareness of surroundings, of limits, of signals. Signals matter here. Cloud movement, wind direction, river color, animal behavior. These cues are read instinctively by those who grow up here. They are not mystical. They are practical. This observational culture sharpens perception. People notice small changes, subtle shifts, early warnings, which is why Iceland often feels calmer than it should. Not because danger is absent, but because it is anticipated. This anticipation carries into the emotional landscape as well. People are not prone to emotional extremes. Joy exists, but it's grounded. Anger exists, but it's controlled. Melodrama feels out of place. Life here demands steadiness. That steadiness doesn't suppress feeling. It channels it. Music is one outlet, writing another, quiet humor another still. Expression happens, but it's often indirect. The environment rewards that restraint. Nothing in Iceland responds well to force. You cannot rush weather. You cannot argue with terrain. You cannot intimidate the sea. You adjust instead. This adjustment becomes habit, and habit becomes identity, which is why Icelanders often seem comfortable with uncertainty. Not because they enjoy it, but because they expect it. Uncertainty is not a crisis here. It's a condition. This acceptance changes how success is defined. Success is not about dominance or expansion. It's about continuity, about systems that keep functioning, about communities that remain intact. Growth is evaluated by resilience, not size. That perspective can feel refreshing or unsettling. To outsiders, use the metrics of scale and speed. But in Iceland, scale has always been the land's domain. Human systems are kept intentionally smaller. This smallness allows for course correction, for feedback loops that actually close, for trust to remain visible. It also means mistakes are remembered. There is no distance here between action and consequence. This proximity keeps ambition in check. People still strive, but rarely at the expense of the whole. This collectivist undercurrent is not ideological, it's environmental. When survival historically depended on cooperation, individualism without regard for others became unsustainable. That lesson never fully faded. Even now, in a modern economy, echoes remain. People show up when needed, not for recognition, because absence would be noticed. That sense of being noticed shapes behavior. It encourages participation, discourages neglect. It also fosters a particular kind of freedom. When you trust that systems and people around you are competent and accountable, you don't need to guard yourself constantly. This lowers social tension, which is why Iceland often feels safe without feeling policed. Order here is not imposed. It's maintained. That maintenance extends a memory. Iceland does not monumentalize its past heavily. There are reminders, yes, but few grand gestures. History is treated as something to understand, not worship. This keeps the focus forward. The country respects its origins without being bound by them, which is crucial in a land that is still forming. Volcanoes don't care about heritage. Glaciers don't pause for tradition. Rivers don't honor boundaries. Icelanders live with that awareness daily. They build with the understanding that nothing is permanent, that adaptation is ongoing. This mindset fosters humility, not submission, but clarity. You are not the center here. You are a participant. That participation has rules, not written everywhere, but understood. Respect limits. Prepare properly. Don't assume exception. If you do, Iceland opens itself gradually, not with spectacle, but with trust. And trust here feels earned. It's why long-term visitors often speak of the country differently than short-term ones. The first group talks about landscapes. The second talks about systems, about how things work, how people respond, how challenges are handled. That's the deeper Iceland, not the eruption or the glacier, but the response to them. A society shaped less by what happens and more by how it reacts. And those reactions are consistent, measured, competent, calm. In a world that increasingly rewards noise, Iceland operates on signal, clear inputs, clear outputs, minimal distortion. This clarity can feel stark, but it's also stabilizing. Leaving Iceland, you may not miss the weather, or the isolation, or the unpredictability, but you may miss the coherence, the sense that life, while demanding, makes sense. That systems are aligned with reality rather than aspiration. That expectations match conditions. That people mean what they say and say only what's necessary. Iceland doesn't promise ease. It offers alignment between land and life, between risk and response, between effort and outcome. And that alignment, quiet, disciplined, and hard-earned, is what stays with you long after the landscape fades from view. Thanks for watching. See you soon.